So we're nearing the end of our day. We have one more speaker, Dr. Marybeth Pompei, who's right here. And we'll speak from 4:30 to 5, and then from 5 to 5:15, we are going to do evaluations. I want you to be sure to do evaluations, particularly because you will get your contact hours if you do, okay? And probably if you fill them out and you just put them out on the table as you go out, that would be fine, or you could leave them on the table, it's your choice. But I'm very, very proud and pleased to present Dr. Marybeth Pompei. She is the Senior Vice President and Clinical Chief Scientist for Exergen Corporation. She's going to be talking about opportunities and pitfalls to catalyzing an idea into a business. She holds a doctorate in bioethics from the Alden March Bioethics Institute at Albany Medical College. She has a master's degree in bioethics and health policy. She received her nursing education from St. Elizabeth Medical Center in Boston, Massachusetts, and Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C. She also has an undergraduate and graduate education in business from the University of Queensland, Australia. And Matt Lee is here, and he is here from Queensland doing a Fulbright, so that's a real nice connection. Dr. Pompei is a renowned clinical scientist in the field of medical thermometry and thermoregulation. And she's obtained 5 patents as an inventor in this field. Pretty extraordinary. She's published 38 publications, including the Physician's Reference Handbook on Temperature. She conducts regular trainings for physicians and nurses on the subject and has been a guest lecturer at Grand Rounds for a number of universities and medical centers. She has 30 years of diverse experience and success in medical care, medical device and technology industries, characterized by an extensive clinical knowledge and an in-depth understanding of evolving medical care and clinical requirements. She's responsible for worldwide sales, marketing, and product management for Exergen Corporation. As you can see, this is an extraordinary woman. Her husband, Frank, and Marybeth are the Exergen Corporation mission sponsors for this conference. So I want to just give them a big applause and thank you. And I look forward to hearing what she has to say.
It's delightful to be here, truly. I'm going to try to work this so that it works fine. I'm used to walking around and doing things, so I'm stationary here. I can't see too much what's up there. Well, I'm glad to see everyone, and I'm delighted to be here. And I'm especially happy to see nurses with innovation. We see it every day, which is just perfect. And we see the need, and we see, I could do that better, or I got a better idea than that. I can't believe they're doing that way. And so what I'm going to tell you is the story behind Exergen temporal scanner thermometer. And this was a new innovation. And boy, did we get killed when we first started coming out. But we spent an awful lot of time in the field. And despite the heretics, we finally got it accepted. So it's a #1 thermometer preferred by nurses. Can you believe that? After all these years, only took us about 30 years. And so every time you come up with an idea for a product or for anything, any kind of an idea, there's always a triggering event. And the triggering event, 9 times out of 10, is a need that you see. And as nurses, you walk around the floors, you see the patients, you see someone doing something stupid, and you say, God, I can do that better than that. And that's what this innovation is all about. So there has to be a need. And a funny way, a triggering event that we had was that my husband, who's sitting right there, he fractured his ankle. And the ladies will relate to what husbands are like when they're down and out and they don't have control. Oh, big time. So he's lying in bed, called me about 10 times. He's getting madder by the minute. I'm all down. I got to get out of here, get me out of this bed. So I came, and I'm walking by the nurse's station, and the nurse, she grabbed me, and she said, Mrs. Pompei, I hate to tell you this, but he's going nowhere. He's got a low-grade fever. Oh, God. So does he know? And she said, oh, he's impossible. I said, well, I'm going to do my best to get him out of here so you can get back to doing what you do. So in any event, I said, when are you doing rounding again to take his temp again? She said, in an hour. And I looked at my watch, and I said, okay. So I counted down 45 minutes. And in 45 minutes, I ran downstairs, or I took an elevator down, actually, got downstairs to the snack shop, and I bought popsicles. They happened to have them. Got back upstairs again into his room, ripped off the paper, and said, here, chew on this. And if one wasn't good, I gave him two. And now it's like 2 minutes to the hour, and here comes the nurse. Well, my God, the thing almost didn't register. He's But to make a long story short, they were happy to get rid of him. So she said, well, okay, he doesn't have a fever. And so I was able to take him home. But as we were driving, I said, we tricked the nurses. And I've been tricking people for a long time about my temperature. And it shouldn't be under control of the individual, the patient. It should be under control of staff and know when you're doing it. When I was little, and I'll bet almost every one of you did the same thing, if I wanted to go to school and I had a fever, I'd huff and puff like a lunatic, and then I'd get, oh, Mom, please just give me a little bit of water, I'll be okay. Because I have ice cold water, drink that down, or ice cream. And if you needed a fever, I had a friend that taught me this little trick. Took a penny, put it on top of a radiator, and then when you're ready to take your temp, you stick the penny scrubbed under your tongue. And then, because all we had at that time were PO thermometers. They didn't have all the non-invasive ones. So it was kind of interesting, and I was able to take my learning as a child and apply it in one of the biggest hospitals and trick them. But we said, this really has got to stop. Got to be a better way. So we started to do some research. Exergen is an industrial company. I was the nursing aspect of it, which was why I was hired. But I didn't know a lot, really, in nursing school at the time that I was in. You don't learn about thermophysiology. You learn a lot of patient care, you learn vitals, but you don't learn a lot of the intricacies that you need to have in order to do better patient care. And thermoregulation is one of them. So we were back to the books, both of us, and we came up with something that was non-invasive, because what our forte is infrared technology. And infrared is unique in that it can look at an object, and it can look at in a distance and measure a temperature. So like on a panel, an electrical panel down underneath the streets, so we can do something like that, or at the airport, measuring the lights, are they going to blow up or what have you. But it's always at a distance. So we thought, well, we're going to try to measure at a distance too, but we're not going to stand back and try to point something. I mean, that'll never go over. So we said, well, maybe we can do it with infrared. And we did the research to see if anyone had done anything that was a non-invasive thermometer, regardless of the application. And we came up with a patent. I'm going to see that. And that was discovered in 1967. There was a patent that was granted, and it was a non-invasive way, or sort of taking ear temperature. The problem was it wasn't quite so non-invasive. Dr. Benziger, Herr Dr. Benziger, he was what's called a paperclip scientist. So during the war, going back in the 1940s, they allowed him to come to the United States, and the way the paperclip came out was his papers were all clipped to some kind of a brochure. And he was allowed to come to the United States as a scientist, and he went to Bethesda Naval Research Institute. He married a woman who was also a physician, and she was an anesthesiologist. So she was complaining of some way they needed to take temperature when the patients were under anesthesia, because it was very critical. And so he invented what is that, and it went into the ear all the way down, and it actually touched the tympanic membrane. I mean, think about a Q-tip when you put it in too far. You get the heebie-jeebies. But this went all the way down and touched the tympanic membrane. And Maria Benziker said, well, maybe it was accurate, it was great, it was non-invasive, but it really is not the solution. We need something that just doesn't go down that far, because 9 times out of 10, when I withdraw this device from the ear canal, the cotton is bloody. And she said, so there's got to be something different. And we said, well, maybe we can do something about that. We measure temperature at a distance for industrial uses, but we never did applied it to medicine. And so we started. Wasn't quite as easy. So we thought, well, before we mess around with humans, we're going to start with the animals. They won't tell anybody. They'll be nice and quiet. So we started with our cat, and we were able to take temperature on her. She didn't mind it. We said, this is pretty good, a cat that doesn't mind something like that. In any event. And so we progressed from her. We went over to Harvard Med School, and we were doing mice. So it worked on the mice. But the worst thing on these little anesthetized mice that they were doing other kinds of research on was when you went to straighten the ear canal, the ear came off in your hand. And the physicians they were howling, myself and my assistant. They were laughing their heads off. We thought we had done that to the mouse. That it was our fault, but they let us think that for a while. Turned out that's not really what happened. That type of mouse was good for something, but it wasn't good about having the rigidity of the ear canal. They came off. So anyway, he let us go back. The elephant that you see is at the bush elephant herd. And I got a call one day, and one of the elephant keepers, or the veterinarian there, said, I hear you've got a tympanic thermometer for animals. And I had a lot of friends that were vets, along with physicians. But this one said, one of my friends told me to call you that you've got this thermometer, and boy, do we need a thermometer for the elephant herd. I said, well, we don't have a thermometer that big. Our thermometer is made for humans and small animals. And he said, you've never seen the inside of an elephant's ear, have you? Well, sure, you see this every day. I said, no, I haven't. And he said, the ear canal is exactly the same specification as a human ear canal. So your thermometer would work. I said, well, he said, hey, why don't you come out to St. Louis and we'll do some animal measurement. And I said, well, why are you taking the temperature on the female elephants? And he said, ovulation. Do you know what it's like to bring a bull elephant to a cow elephant when she's not ready? Well, no, I don't really know, but I can imagine something like that. And sure enough, that's what they were doing. And it worked perfectly. And a couple of days later in the mail, that was a long time ago, I got the picture of the elephant and him using my thermometer. It was really funny. So we said, okay, animals, now we got to go to humans. This is a little bit different. So we wanted to get sick patients that were febrile, because if a thermometer can't identify a fever, what good is it? You can take a temperature of anything, but what meaning does it have? And I hate to say that we were fortunate, but we were fortunate in that we had the AIDS epidemic, and we also had some dengue fever here in Boston. But we were able to get fevers, and myself and another nurse went down to New York for a week during the AIDS outbreak, and we had the patients in the hospitals that we were in, most of them had swans. So we were actually able to compare our thermometer, our tympanic thermometer, to the swans. And we were getting patients that were 109, 110, but both the swan and the tympanic thermometer were reading the same things. And it was just amazing. Unfortunately, a lot of the AIDS patients succumbed to the AIDS, god-awful disease. At that time, there was no resolution to it. And then we said, okay, we're measuring some really sick patients. What about healthy patients? And my friend was the medical director of the Boston Marathon for years, 25 years. And I had called him and I said, what about the athletes? Because we're looking for healthy individuals. We don't want patients right now. We just need some healthy individuals. And he said, well, come on. You can be part of the medical team, part of the team right under the tent on the Boston Marathon. We said, okay. I said, how are you measuring temperature now? Are you ready for this? In the medical tent, the runners, rectal temperature. I said, you are not. He said, yeah, occasionally we do a PO temp, but most of them are rectal because they're huffing and puffing and we can't get a good PO temp. I said, oh my God. So anyway, we, with our handy-dandy tympanic thermometer, we started taking some measurements. And we were getting, every so often, we get a temperature of 105, 106 on the runner. And previous to what we were doing, they were shipping everybody off to the hospital in an ambulance. You get a temperature that high, off they went. And it turns out the 105 and 106, and yeah, they were valid temperatures, but it was from the metabolic heat and the muscle mass from all that running. And nobody picked up on it until they realized what they were getting. We get to the hospital and they don't even have a fever. Are you sure they sent the right patient over here? But in any event, we said, we're doing pretty good. But if you look at that picture that's a runner from the marathon, he's about to have his ear temperature taken. This is probably the second one, so we knew what was coming. He's not a happy camper because it hurts, and you stick anything in your ear canal, and it hurts. And the only way to get a real accurate one is to get right down, and like the Benzigers did, they touched the tympanic membrane. We just wanted to look at it. But it still was stretching the canal, and it's like having a big, long otoscope shoved in there, and it wasn't good. And we said, okay, back to the books. Now, here's my favorite slide, absolute favorite slide. 1% inspiration. It all started with a touch. By the way, I forgot to tell you, when you're inventing a product and you're thinking of bringing something that's going to make someone's job easier, it's 1% inspiration and it's 99%, guess what, right. And that was good old Thomas Edison, and boy, was he right, absolutely right. But the inspiration that we had for a non-invasive thermometer came about with the touch. And you say, wow, we've been doing that forever. As moms, we do it. As nurses, we do it. Still do it. You got a thermometer, we still touch. I don't believe that thermometer. You touch and get it done. So the need for a non-invasive, accurate medical thermometer was there. However, the stipulation was it had to be as gentle as a nurse's touch. So off we went. Still more inspiration. Question is, since we don't have numbers on our hands, how accurate can we be? What can we find that we can make a measurement with a touch to the forehead, have the accuracy but the gentleness of a nurse's touch? So I started going through at the time we didn't have internet, so I had to go through the stacks at Harvard Library, thanks to my husband's degrees, and go through every bit of research I could find on taking temperature. And I went all the way back to Hippocrates. And good old Hippocrates, 2,500 years ago, believe it or not, they were using palpation for fever. So they would touch the individual, and they would quantify it, which is really, that surprised me, but they quantified it by using as fast as a gazelle or as slow as a turtle. So the gazelle was a high temp, a turtle was a low temp. How accurate is that? It worked. We still have a population, so Hippocrates started it. So he said, that's pretty interesting, so we'll go on from there. So now we're looking at focused perspiration. We'll never get rid of perspiration. Nothing beats hard work, and you have to be, okay, I got an idea, how am I going to do it? Perspiration gets you there. So what we needed when we were trying to make this thermometer work and make one better than an ear thermometer, where are we going to measure? We're going to measure at the forehead. We've been doing this for years. Well, 2,500 years, going back to Hippocrates. So, okay, we're going to try to do something at the forehead. How do we make it accurate? So data, more data. My husband is a scientist. I wasn't at the time. I was a nurse, and so I need a reason. I'm going to do this. It's got to be gentle. But he's saying data. Where the heck am I going to get data on all these things? So like we all do, you call your friends in the hospitals. Can you get us in? Can we just observe? Do we need IRB approval? All that stuff. So we went through that whole exercise, and the bottom line was we had access to a lot of the hospitals in the Massachusetts area and Boston area, and also in New York. Because I had a lot of friends that I could, please let us come and just look. We won't touch anything, but please let us look. So we did, and we learned. I watched the nurses take care of the patients. They'd use a thermometer, and then we'd touch. They touched, we touched, we believe this thermometer. In any event, we also needed patients' reactions. How do they like that thermometer? It wasn't ours. I mean, these were PO and rectal temps and axillary temps. And they would squirm, they didn't like it, and nurse turned around, the patient took it out of his mouth, and the whole, you know the story better than I do. So we said, you know what, we gotta have a better way, we gotta find something better. They like the touch, we gotta make it accurate. How do we do that? A lot of work. So, focused perspiration, it's still work, it's still effort. So we looked at under infrared imaging, but this graphic on the left was used for one of our patents. And what it does, it shows beautifully, very simply, we just focused on the temporal artery, and it's always visible. And what we were doing was scanning directly over, horizontally over that artery. And one of the wonderful things about the temporal artery is that it has a constant rate of blood flow. So no matter what, that blood flow is going. The rest of the body can vasoconstrict, which is blue is cold, green is cold. And if you look at the thermal image on the right, you can see the temporal artery, but the man is as cold as a clam. So green and blue, that's all cold. So we said, I think we're onto something. When you're onto something, it's still some focused perspiration. You still have to work, but you've got to patent it. It's an expensive process, but somebody's going to come along, and all the work that you did, they're going to steal it. And they take it and they run with it, and now all of a sudden they're heroes. You're sitting there and you go, did you have your head by an elephant's ear? Or, all these things that we had. So that's what you have to be careful of, and it's worth the time to patent something. And we've got about over 100 patents now on different products that we have, but that's got to be done. Expensive as it is, it's got to be done. So, more focused perspiration. This is going back to Tom Edison. Early studies, you've got to prove accuracy. If it's something that has to be accurate or something that has to be very acceptable to patients, then you've got to work with that. And so you've got to get studies that validate what you're doing. With a thermometer, it has to be measurable to what they know, whatever the hospital is using, whether it's PO, whether it's rectal, axillary. The best for us was PA catheters. And thank God at Mass General, I had some friends, and they brought us in, they checked with IRB, and they allowed us to come in, train some of the nurses who took temperature on the patients in the cardiac intensive care unit, because most of them had swans. And it was like a eureka moment. We were matching the swan. So that was perfect. So we still needed FDA clearance to be able to bring it to market and get some more data. And the hospitals, as you can see, they're up there. The university hospitals are usually the best. And when you first are asking a hospital, could you do some studies for us, we need them to support the validity of the thermometer and also to get the FDA approval. And so you have to pay for it. So those 4 studies were funded by Exergen. We were the first to present it to the FDA. They didn't know what on earth it was. They thought we were talking gobbledygook. And so they made us keep going back, more data, more data, more data. We had 2 great big 3-ring notebooks filled with, they wanted the handwritten from the hospital, which we had to get, and we did. And we ultimately got the approval on it. But we're not done yet with the perspiration. Because it's so different, anything that's different is questioned. And because the temporal thermometer is different, at that time it was extraordinarily different, how can something so quick and non-invasive be accurate? And I couldn't tell you how many times I was beaten over the head. It got so that our sales reps didn't want to go in a hospital. They're killing us, Marybeth. They are. They hate it. They hate this thing. And they'd quit. And I had a group of nurses, and they were saying the same thing. This is crazy. What is wrong with these people? This thing works. But in any event, we got some of the early adopter hospitals, and I convinced them with their arm behind their back. If somebody happens to call you, and it will only be a premier hospital, I promise, would you talk to them a little bit and tell them that this does work, that you did a study on it, and what have you? And then, your nursing friends, they'll do anything for you. Just love it. And they'd say, yeah, we can do that. So I think, okay. So here's more perspiration. And you've got to have quality in whatever you're making. And if you don't have quality, you bought the farm. Because the first time a product starts to fail, everybody's going to hear about it. And then no matter what you do to fix it, they still have that in their head. Oh, no, I heard it. They missed a fever. They did this, that, and the other thing with it. You've got to have the quality to know that you get the same quality thermometer after thermometer or product after product. You only have one shot at doing it, especially when it's something that's different. So here's what we did. We decided we're going to keep control and make the products in the United States. And this picture was about 10, 12 years ago. And now we've got 200 employees. This was all the employees that we had at the time. And the quality is still there. We have been making them in the United States ever since. We've never had them go to China or India or any other place where they're making it much cheaper. You pay more, but you don't have the oh my God, whoops, you're in control of the quality. You catch something before it leaves the factory. And so that was why we do it in the United States. And I think having it made in the United States is something you can brag about. And so any product that you're thinking about, let people know that you're making it here. And whether it's in your basement, your bedroom, or wherever it is, just let them know I'm making it right here in the United States. So we finally got adoption around the country, and even over in Europe. We got a lot of university hospitals, some University of Vienna and Groningen in Holland, Austria, and the UK wasn't so quick to come on board, but that's okay. We just kind of ignored them. Hope nobody here is British. But what we were doing is we started to get, because of the backing of a lot of the main hospitals, we started to get more and more adopters using our products. And they had to be trained in servicing. And in servicing is difficult, and it's expensive. It's time-consuming. I got more fanny time on airplanes going out to do in-servicing. I was an executive platinum with American Airlines. All I had to do was walk into the airport. No, Marybeth, come on, we got first class available for you. He said, come on, get up here. And I'd go to the head of the class. I got all my clearance from the TSA and everything. So they like frequent flyers because we're paying money. So it's not that they loved my beautiful singing voice or anything. It was that I was paying a lot of money. But I said, there's got to be a better way. You know what in-servicing is like. Two people might show up. You're lucky if they come around the time that they say come around. Well, we have to have you back tonight. Well, the team can't do anything until 2 o'clock in the morning. And you try to do it, you accommodate. Myself and another nurse would be together as a team, because at 2 o'clock in the morning, especially in New York City, it's not exactly a great place to be. But we did it. I'd have to come home and face my husband. Well, where's the data? Well, we were afraid to walk the streets at 2 a.m., so couldn't do that. So we did. We went to the hospitals and got it done. But talk about a eureka moment. And this is a quick story, but it's interesting, at least to me anyway. I'm coming back from Holland, from one of the university hospitals. So I'm boarding British Air. They're very stuffy anyway. And then I was connecting at Heathrow to come back to Boston. So as I got on the plane, because I had seen the safety film 1,000,000 times at least, if not more. And so I'm just kind of putting my stuff away, settling in, putting my book out. And, those days you really didn't have a lot of laptops that you could use because there was no Wi-Fi. So I'm sitting there and I'm hearing all this laughing and rustling, and I turn around, it's a coach, and there are all the people standing there with their cell phones. And what the heck are they looking at? And I looked up at the flight attendant came over. She says, "Marybeth, look at that." I said, "Oh my God." These were the most beautiful figures that you have ever seen. These were cartoons. The flight attendants, male and female, the pilot, they were actually something that was, you can't imagine how beautiful they made them. High heels, very thin, beautiful hair, everything about them was absolutely pristine. But it caught the attention of everyone in the plane, even other frequent flyers. We all had done ho-hum, not this again. Whoops, mate. We could do it ourselves, but this was different. And we watched the whole thing and watched everyone videotape it. Some of the passengers even asked if they could play it again, and you know what? They did. But it was great. So all the way home in the plane, I'm thinking, I wonder if that would work. Could that take the place of in-servicing? So because we have, my husband has also got degrees from MIT, and one of our sons does, so we got some contacts from MIT Media Lab. Those of you that are not in Massachusetts, they don't speak the Queen's English still after all these years that I'm married to him. Sometimes I say, "What did he say?" People would always say, "Marybeth, what is he talking about?" And I'd have to translate, but that's an MIT speak. So make a long story short, we got to someone who said, "We can do this video for you, but we would not recommend the things that you saw on British Air." Why? Because it's extraordinarily expensive to do those little mannequins. And I said, "Well, any ideas what we can do?" And he said, "Yeah, why don't we be like Disney or the video games, and we'll do what's called machinima." And what the heck is that? So machinima, you kind of strip the body down so that it's all mechanics, and then they move arms, legs, the heads, they get all that right, and then they paint the skin on and the uniforms on, or whatever you've got the mannequins in, and yet you get lifelike movement, sort of. It's really good. But when you see video games or you see any of the Disney films, that's the same technology. And it's a fraction of the cost, even though it's megabucks, a fraction of the cost of doing puppets or doing the images on the screen. So we came up with the virtual classroom, and what we did was we simulated an in-service. So the nurses in the background are having an in-service. And yeah, that's my avatar in the front. I think, yeah, I'm keeping that forever. It never grows old, which is great. But we went out to start testing it, and I was this time I was back again in New York, but we were doing in the first training session, so a whole lot of nurses had come in, and we had nurse educators, and I wanted to see, oh God, please make this thing work. So we got it set up, and the nurses, as we were going along, the nurses started laughing, and they're saying, "Oh God, that's great, that's so true," and then laugh some more and what have you, and one of the nurses says, "Hey, dude, that's you," and it was really good. So all of a sudden, this was one of those conference rooms where there's a partition in the middle. It's like an accordion thing. So the accordion partition opens a little bit, and two of the physicians who were having a seminar in the conference room next to us poked their head in, and they said, "Hey, it sounds like fun. What are you guys doing over here?" And they said, "Oh, we're watching a porn movie. Can we come in?" And they did. They called some of their friends, and actually that was the first in-service that a physician ever took. But it was fun because they told a lot of the people that were naysayers in the hospital, "Hey, we're doing it all wrong," or this thing works. You ought to see the list of studies they've got. So it worked beautifully. So now I tell people, well, yeah, there's a porn movie, but you have to be careful who comes in. Of course, then everybody lines up and they come in. So successful innovation measured by market acceptance. And after a while, we started getting more and more of the thermometers in use in different hospitals. And so we did some surveys, and we used the big names in the surveys, like Harris Polls and all those things. And we didn't do like SurveyMonkey or anything, but we had some megabuck ones. But it's worth it because you really get some good data from it. And we found out, which we had hoped that we would find out, is that the temporal scanner was #1 with nurses. And that was just, it brings tears to my eyes every time I think about it. It was such hard work, but yet it paid off. And then, okay, another way to measure the successful product, and whenever you've got a product ready to be out there, you can measure it by market acceptance. And we have a consumer as well as a professional grade model. And it's preferred by nurses and physicians, pediatricians in particular. It's a best-selling product for a consumer in retailers. And the accuracy, which is key, we've got more, at that time we said 50, but it's really more than 60 peer-reviewed published studies. Now, successful innovation is also measured by revenue, that helps, and market share. So you have to keep your eye on the bottom line. If you're making a product and it's costing a fortune and nobody's paying attention, nobody's buying it from you, you may as well keep your day job because you're not going to get very far. So you have to watch the pennies, and then you watch, am I making any progress? And you should be going that way, not that way. So that was a big marker for us. And then you also want to look at, about how many are out in the field and how many temperatures are being taken. And we were able to plot that as well, and that was steadily going up. So we said, we're on the right track here. Another method of measuring success is cultural acceptance. That's different from market acceptance. Cultural, just the guy down the street, do they like it? How about the kids? How about the physicians? How about whoever? But once we started getting calls from the different like movie producers from movies. You'll see in the middle on the bottom, that was Spider-Man. And our thermometer was actually used in Spider-Man. And I'm assuming that most everybody kind of knows about Spider-Man, but the physician turned into a lizard. And how he knew he was turning into a lizard when his scales and stuff were coming, the first clue was his temperature dropped to 87. So the producer said to us, I need a thermometer that will measure 87. And I said, well, we can do that. And he said, no, you don't understand. I need it only to measure 87. And I said, okay, we can do that. And we actually sent him to produce it two, and just in case, one for backup and one. But every time you turn the button on, all it said was 87 degrees. And then the scales come, and he starts turning into a lizard. And then we were on Grey's Anatomy and what have you, and on a television news program, I was invited to go on that and talk about flu season and how to identify flu, et cetera. So that takes a little bit, but cultural acceptance in anything is important. So now here we are. This is the not so nice kind. This is when you want to kill somebody. We measure it by patent infringers. And it's kind of a weird way to measure success. These sons of guns, they're out there, they're stealing our innovation. What are they doing? They're coming in from China. The worst of it is they never went through the 99% perspiration. They just walk into the marketplace with the Chinese knockoff, and here they are in the stores selling them. And some now are in hospitals. They're being thrown out, but they're there. So you have to guard all the time. And it's not just these crummy little companies from China and India and wherever they're making things like that. They can get something to you in a day. It's unbelievable. So the big companies, look at Vicks and Braun. We know the names well. But we thought, oh my God, they're doing it. They got so much money. Here's a little Exergen out of Massachusetts. But we took them to court. We sued them. And it took a long time and a lot of money. Finally, we got in this past January. And they were in there, and it was a battle. It was a jury trial, and the jury found 100% for Exergen. Megabucks, but it'll probably, I hope I'm alive by the time that the settlement comes through, but in any event, we prevailed. And you've got to do that. You've got to get the infringers out. When you see them with something that's a copycat product, and you think of all the nights and all the times you spent in hospitals, all the patients that you saw, AIDS included, and they just walk in off the street and here it is, Mr. Walgreens or Walmart or wherever it might be. So it really is angry. But then it takes a couple of years before it works its way through the court. But we had our day in court in January, and the jury was unanimous and gave us everything. So it was really good. So I'm just about done now. My last slide, I promise. Honest. Nancy is waving at me, time out. A good product, a good invention can change the world. And you want to do that. You want to have something that people are going to say, wow, I never heard of that before, but boy, does that work well. And I think that we've come to the point where we're changing the way the world takes temperature. And that's, I'm going to leave you with that thought. But do I have time to say quick questions? Sure. Oh, she's worse than my mother. Okay, any questions? No? Did I do such a good job that you don't have any questions? Thank you very much. Thank you.